Realtors love it when the market's on fire, but not when the neighborhood is. All right, let's hear it. This is the real story with Adam and Sherry. I'm Adam Hamalian.
And I'm Sherry Hutchens.
This is where two broker associates talk about all things real estate. Hey, Sherry.
Hey, Adam.
I hesitated to even make a joke about this topic because it's so serious. But try to do a teaser so people will pay attention.
Yeah, nobody wants their neighborhood to be on fire ever.
No, 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 no. Yeah. So, on today's episode, we're going to talk about fire hardening and the requirements around that based on some state legislation. But before we get into that topic, it's been a couple weeks actually since our last podcast. Let's talk about the market. What do we see happening out there?
It's a property by property market. Thank you, Patty Kehoe.
Yeah, I think we've quoted him a couple times now.
Yeah, because he's so right.
Yeah.
There are houses that are getting offers and offers and offers and offers, and there are other houses that we can't get people to show them.
Yeah. I think that the some of that's kind of twofold. Part of that is obviously price point is making a difference.
Yeah.
Uh, and neighborhoods are making a difference. And actually one of the topic today is one of those factors about high
Mhm.
fire zone and even regardless about the insurance question, which is a separate issue, just kind of people anxious about it and want to have some more clarity about what it means and is it going to be a safe place to live as opposed to just how affordable is it. Do you think people are waiting for interest rates to come down?
I can't figure it out. Usually I have a really good sense of what's going on in the market, but we have two listings on the same main drag, Red Gear Road, and they both back up to, they're both in high fire hazard severity zones. That's easy for me to say.
Mhm.
And I mean, they both have big fields of basically dead vegetation because it's September. We haven't had any rain for, I don't know, 8 months, something
Yep.
like that. So they both have that issue. One of them's 950, one of them's 185. The 950 total ended up with seven offers. I mean, we had all kinds of other issues related to that, but and the other one has had two showings, and it doesn't. The only thing that's really different is the price. And I would think people in the 1.8s are more able to afford a house than people are in the 900s, but apparently not. I mean, 900 is for entry level housing for Walnut Creek. This is a duet. It's not even a single family home. So I don't know. I haven't figured the market out yet. I'm working
Yep.
on it.
Yep.
Thoughts?
I think, well, it's interesting. I mean, we've been so used to pricing homes at value and having them bid up, and we're seeing such a rise in the number of homes selling below its list price. It
Hmm.
really comes into question to talk about marketing strategy and list price
Yeah.
and some conversations that we haven't really had for a number of years, certainly since before COVID.
Yeah.
Uh, but we're not going to talk about it too much. We don't want to betray our strategy out in the public, but
Right.
it's taken a lot of more of our skill and experience to debate these things, and that's okay that we actually have to work to do our job.
It's what we do,
Yeah.
and we're happy to do it.
One of the things that's always interesting about our job is that there's always something new, new forms, new
Mhm.
policies, new laws,
Mhm.
even in the same old market. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a law that went into effect in the last year or so regarding fire hardening and kind of in conjunction with policy following the changes in wildfires.
Right.
Uh, so you wrote our monthly newsletter on this topic, so I feel like you have a little bit of the leg up on the discussing this, even though I've had to do a little of it. So why don't we start with when fire hardening is we're using it as a short term for a form that we have to fill out. But
Mhm.
where does this conversation start with a fire risk for a house? How do homeowners find out about that? And whether it's owners or sellers and buyers, but where's step one on this process?
So I think way back to step one is the law that was passed, AB 38, which specified that any houses in a high fire zone had to be have fire had to have defensible space and fire hardening. Well, hold on a second. It does not dictate fire hardening. It dictates defensible space. Uh, As you can hear me struggling through this, this is the first time that we've had to deal with it. Other agents have been dealing with it for the last year or so since these rules went into effect. AB 38 says that anybody in a high fire zone has to have an inspection by the local jurisdiction. And we have not had that. And so I've been putting it off because my brain is full and I didn't want to learn anything new. And I hate the term fire hardening because it's not innate to me. It doesn't tell me what it means. So there you have my opinions.
Oh, you have opinions. Now you're
Yes,
saying you have opinions.
no shortage of opinions
Yeah,
here. It's
that
like
checks out.
and I'm always trying to complain about the lawmakers passing laws when they don't actually do this for a living and they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. I actually think this is some good policy. I mean, the logistics of it kind of get bumpy here and there, but
Yeah.
I think, there's a local agency, the Moraga Orinda Fire Department. Actually, it's had a process about this in place for years. This
Yeah,
isn't new for them.
we've done those.
Yeah. And so essentially it's a similar
Hmm.
mandate has now been expanded, but to sell a house in I'll say MOFDA, that's my abbreviation,
Yep.
MOFD, Moraga
Oh,
Orinda Fire District, MOFDA,
yep.
um, that you're required to have then they were allowing kind of self-inspections. You took pictures of your house,
Yeah.
fronts, back, sides, and they were looking for things like are trees overhanging your property? Do you have weed abatement that needs to happen, which of course
Hmm.
has been in process? People who
Right.
own larger pieces of land that have hillsides with weeds on them have had to
Yeah.
knock those down within so many feet of the structure and so many feet of the property line to prevent fire from jumping from property to property.
Yep.
So high fire zone or very high fire zone. How does somebody figure out if they are in one of those zones?
There is a document or a report generated by the state of California called a Natural Hazard Zone Disclosure Report. It's required on any sale of 1 to 4 unit property in the state of California, unless for some reason it's exempt. Although, even when our clients are exempt, for example, if a successor trustee is selling a house that they've never lived in, they're not really they don't really need to disclose it, but we always do it anyway. It's $125. And one of the first few pages of that document tells potential buyers if the house is in a flood zone, fire zone, earthquake zone. So, and if the box is checked that says high fire hazard severity zone, that triggers a disclosure called a fire hardening and defensible space disclosure, an addendum, and an inspection.
Did you know that you can also go to, if you're not selling and you want to know, you can go to the CalFire
Oh,
website, who's really the governing agency here,
yeah.
and you can put your address in and discover whether your house is in a high or very high fire zone.
Yeah, there's
Have
a
you,
map, right?
yeah,
Isn't there a map? Yeah.
there's a map, and it's in, as you might guess, that's color coordinated with red, dark red, orange, yellow as kind of the different zones. And what's really fascinating to look at that map is where those colors show up just kind of from a casual visual. And not surprisingly, the Central Valley is fine. Like,
Yeah.
between the coastal range and the Sierras, everything
Yep.
in the middle is not in a fire zone
Right.
whatsoever.
Right.
But then both as you get to both east and west of the valley, beginning in the foothills and then beginning on the coastal range, they begin
Yeah.
to be yellow and red because it's where there's a lot of older vegetation, a larger fuel like trees
Or
and
a vegetation
shrubs.
period.
Yeah. And those are the things that are cause some of that in the terrain, it being on a
Yeah.
hill. But what's interesting is that you get past the foothills, you're going up into the Sierras, it drops off again. And I'm like, what's going on there? And then of course, why would it stop at a certain place?
Because of the tree line.
It's above tree line. There isn't the fuel disappears.
Right. Right. It's all about the fuel. So
Yeah.
I know that there are people out there who question whether or not climate change is real, but there are some indications that in the last 50 years or so, 50-ish years, we've had some climate change. When I was a kid, we got lots of rain. It would seem like it rained from October until March or April every year. And we didn't really have droughts very often. They were occasional, but the less rain we get, the more droughts we have, the more vegetation we have that can burn during our non-rainy season.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so fires need three things, right? They need oxygen, fuel, and heat.
yep,
And we can't really control the oxygen or the heat portion of it, but we can control the fuel
right.
portion of it. And that's where these laws and regulations and guidelines really focus is how to minimize the available fuel on each individual home. So as you go to either if you're not selling, you just want to go to CalFire and look up your address, or if you're in the process of selling, that's really kind of step two then is to begin to look at what fuel is around a property. And
Yeah,
there's two things. One, there's the structure itself. We'll come back to that. But then there is what they're referring to as the defensible area. And I think you're reading up on that. They've kind of divided that space up and the different kind of
mhm.
things to look for. Do you want to talk about defensible space?
Yeah, defensible space is the type of inspection that the CalFire is doing when someone is selling a home and an inspection is required. And they are going out to look to see how much vegetation or fuel is around a house. And let me pull up the specifics here because there are different zones. And you're also going to get my opinion on zones because instead of calling them one, two, three, they call them zero, one, two.
Well, ground zero, that they're trying to make you think about like, major event. Ground zero.
I guess
I don't know. I'm trying to help, but it's not
you're trying to help me, I know, or you're trying to keep me from rolling my eyes because it's like really
too late.
have three require we're going to have three requirements, but we're going to not tell homeowners that the threes are zero, one, and two. You
Yeah.
know, don't get me started. So anyway, within 5 feet of a home, you start 5 feet from your home, keep the area closest to building structures and decks clear. Um, and it will prevent embers from igniting materials that can spread to your home. So we recently had a listing where we had spent a fortune putting, okay, a small fortune, putting, I call it realtor bark, the pretty mulch that we put around the house that looks so pretty in pictures. We put it around the house because it looks gorgeous. We had great pictures. It makes everything look neat and clean. And in preparation for the CalFire inspection, we had to go have our gardener rake it away and remove it because it was within 5 feet of the home and it
Yep.
would not have passed that CalFire inspection.
All right. So they don't want bark that close to the house.
Any dead or dying plants, and even though this is zone zero and 5 feet is kind of the measure of what you're looking for, all branches within 10 feet of a chimney for zone zero. Any combustible items like outdoor furniture on top of decks, move firewood away from the house, replace combustible
Wait, wait,
fin.
wait. So you're saying don't stack up the fuel that's meant for burning right next to your house? Is that what you're saying?
I know, hard to believe,
That
right?
just well, that one seems like common sense. As much as
Oh,
we're complaining about everything else, that one for sure seems like a no-brainer.
well, it used to be that you didn't want to pile up your firewood next to the house because, as you always say, that's a termite smorgasbord.
That's right. They just say, "Hey, look, let's lunch."
Say smorgasbord the way you say it.
It's a smorgasbord.
Yes. Anyway, combustible fencing, gates, arbors need to be replaced with non-combustible alternatives, and any garbage or recycling containers need to be outside that 5 foot zone. So that's zone zero.
All right. And so everybody has that. It's hard to have a house that
Yeah.
doesn't have the first 5 feet. As
Yeah.
we expand on this, the lots come more into play. So if you have a smaller lot,
Hmm.
zone one, which is really the second area, probably still applies. So what
Yeah.
are some things that are in this second zone referred to as zone one?
So again, it's all dead plants, grass, weeds, dead or dry leaves, pine needles, and trim trees regularly to keep branches a minimum of 10 feet from other trees. And then create separation between trees, shrubs, and any items that could catch fire.
All
Not really that much different than zone zero, which is 5 feet. That one is 30 feet away from the
right.
house.
So my impression is they want you to trim up the branches so that wind can blow underneath
Hmm.
and clear things out rather than have things smolder underneath of a plant and not or underneath a tree canopy and
Yeah.
not see it. So they're trying to eliminate places where it could fester unseen and
Hmm.
cause secondary problems. All right, and then how about the third zone known as zone two? And this is really farther away and really
Yeah.
more applicable to larger properties.
Yeah, this doesn't really apply to homes in a subdivision because our lots are not usually that big. So 100 feet, you need 100 feet of defensible space. And so it means cutting or mowing annual grass, the big tall grass that would grow, not a lawn. Creating horizontal space between shrubs and trees. Um, Creating vertical space between grass, shrubs, and trees, removing all fallen leaves, needles, twigs, barks, cones, and small branches. This is really foothill kind of stuff or for
Yeah,
heavily forested areas.
yeah,
Keep 10 feet of clearance around that wood pile that you moved away from the termite smorgasbord. And it should be sitting on bare mineral soil if possible. And then clear areas around outbuildings and propane tanks. So makes me think of Sea Ranch, where everybody's on propane tank up there.
yeah,
And they're all surrounded by the most beautiful wood fences.
yeah, yeah,
It'll be interesting to see what they're doing about that.
yeah, yeah, it is. So, we kind of like jumped over one step here before we got to talking about these zones and doing the fire inspection. So when you go to CalFire and you
Mhm.
look up your address, it actually make helps you understand what jurisdiction you're supposed to go to,
Mhm. Yep.
and because it varies because not every local jurisdiction has it. So we're working out of Contra Costa County. Those of you who are listening to us from abroad, and so the Contra Costa Fire District has a mechanism in place and to be able to come and do the inspections. And so your county, depending on where you're listening, may have somebody in your county that does that inspection. But if not, the CAL FIRE will say you need to contact the state to do your state inspection, and CAL FIRE has inspectors in other counties.
Right.
One of the things that was really interesting to learn about, so our inspection is good for 6 months.
Mhm.
And if you get your initial inspection, I forget exactly, and you don't pass because you need to do some work, you have actually a pretty long window to do it. But in some counties, and I believe like Placer County and um, a couple of the counties
El
like El
Dorado.
Dorado, like you have like 10 days to do your
Yeah.
inspect, I mean, to do your clearance. It's like a short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and those of our clients who have places up at Tahoe know that you've had to do things like raking up pine needles for a long time. This isn't new for you either.
Yeah.
And because that's partly because Placer County goes all the way up past the passes and down the other side. So,
Yep.
so that would be your next step is to figure out who is doing your inspection and make that payment. In Contra Costa County, the inspection is $300, and if you pay online, you got to pay a service fee, so it ends up being 316. So it's not inexpensive, and of course, you don't need to have it inspected if you're not going to sell. But it's not bad idea to at least see what these expectations are about how what needs to be done to help protect
Yeah.
your space. So we've talked about the environment around your house.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about the fire hardening. Now, the legislation said something to the effect of minimal. There was some sort of quote about minimal expense to alter something, and then they
Mhm.
gave this whole long list of things that could be done as
Oh, yeah.
recommendations. And it's like, well, you look at some of those; they're not inexpensive because once a
Yeah.
house is built, undoing and redoing things is not all that simple. So we're all familiar that shake roofs, so wood roofs have
Mhm.
been banned forever,
Hmm.
really mainly by insurance agencies, less so about a state law. But
Yeah.
it's almost been impossible to get a insurance on a wood roof, I think,
Yep.
for 20 years. I'm
That happened to me in, I think, like 2002 or three. I was in contract on a house in Rancho San Miguel, not one of the Eichlers, one of the other ranch style. And they had a shake roof that was older than 16 years old. And at the time, the insurance requirement was if it was older than 16 years old, it was uninsurable. And it fell out of contract because the seller said, I'm not replacing my roof. And it's like, well, I guess you're not selling your house either. So.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are not they're not a good idea anyway, but at the they have to be, yeah, get rid of them.
So when we have these mass fires, and the last one, I don't know if it was the last one, but the one that was in the Palisades, we learned a lot of really interesting things. Because you may remember images of that one house that survived, and
Yep.
while the rest of the neighborhood had totally been destroyed.
Yep.
And so what we're learning is there's two things. One is the materials used to build a house, and
Mhm.
then also the construction itself, and what are things about the construction that might make it less susceptible to
Yeah.
burning. And
Yeah.
so some of you may know my undergraduate degrees in construction management. So I learned how to build houses, high rises, roads, everything else. So this is really I kind of geek out on the stuff. So I apologize if I am overly excited about how to fire harden your house, because
Well, you're also the
Sherry
son
is
of
not
a
entertained by
firefighter.
my enthusiasm. She thinks it's a stupid word, and I understand why she says it, but I love it.
It's just the word. I don't think the process is stupid.
I know that's what I said. You don't like the word hardening. Uh,
And did we say you're the son of a firefighter?
my dad is, yes, my dad was an Oakland firefighter,
Yep.
26 years Oakland firefighter.
Yeah.
And as we were prepping, I was talking about how as a kid, I can remember my dad coming into my bedroom when he had to leave in the middle of the night, not to go fight fires in the Oakland Hills, but when he get called in, he was backfilling. So
Yeah.
if the fire engine went to go do the up on the hill, that left that district vacant. And so they called in off-duty firefighters to come backfill in the house. So if there was a call, but there were
Huh.
other times that I was, when he was on duty, that he went to the hill fire. But I didn't understand that till I was older. Kind of freaked me out.
Mm. Yeah, I bet it did.
Um, and he hated the grass fires. They were much more dangerous than a house fire. A house fire he felt like was more predictable and could understand it. But when you're doing the wildfires outside, the change in wind dramatically can change the dynamics of the fire. And of course, he was he had retired before the Oakland Hills fire, just I think within a year or two, but knew all the people that were there. There was a fire chief that lost his house in that fire. The best man for my wedding, his childhood home burned down in that fire. So,
Mm. It's a
very pain,
devastating fire.
yeah, very painful memories about that. So, but one of the things that we learned is that it's not so much that when one structure catches on fire, that structure's flames catch the next house on fire. It's embers from the first fire, or from a fire a block away, or it could be even substantially farther away, where the wind
Yeah.
is causing these embers to travel. And so what we've learned about the hardening part about it is how to resist a burning ember
Yeah.
when it lands on the roof or blows up against the side of your house and whatnot,
Or into your vent.
or into your vent. And so that was one of the things that we learned from the Palisades was if you have the vents, the foundation vents, which are important to have for other reasons to
Mhm.
keep moisture from building up, that you need to have a mesh that has an eighth of an inch opening or less, and
Mhm.
that the small embers that can go through the eighth of an inch are less likely to catch your subfloor on fire. But if you have bigger, so I recently saw one that was chicken wire, so the openings were more than an inch, that a big piece of burning ember could blow underneath that house, and that bigger piece
Yep.
could catch the subfloor on
All
fire.
that old dry wood underneath there.
Yeah. That leads us to why they don't want wood chips so close to the house, because if a burning ember lands on the wood chips and then the wind blows it up against the those mesh, you have all this fire, kind of like a blowtorch blowing through those vents. So that's why they don't want wood chips right next to the house.
Yeah.
So let's go back up to the roofs for a sec. Some of the least flammable roofs are the best. So a metal roof
Hmm.
Obviously, in the mountain ranges, that's more common just for snow, having it be smooth so the smoke can. It also
Yeah.
helps with fire. Asphalt shingles are kind of in the middle. They're obviously better than the um, the wood shake, but there is flammable material in the asphalt, but it's harder to catch it on fire.
Hmm.
But what we see with roofs though is places like valleys where debris from local trees can build up, and you could
Hmm.
have the duff that catches on fire. So you want to be able to have places, avoid having places where that can be, as a construction technique, can gather leaves
Yeah.
or other stuff like that.
Clean your gutters out twice a year
Yeah.
because it's just fuel.
Exactly. And then we talk about the siding of a house. So a wood siding is more susceptible to danger or to flammability than, say, a hardy board, which is a cement man-made product. Stucco is an excellent fire-resistant siding, and you'll
Mhm.
often see in insurance policies that you might get a discount for having a certain kind of siding. Well, that's really expensive to reside your whole house.
Yeah.
But if you're doing new construction or if you're remodeling, major remodel, you might consider changing your material on the outside. So one of the things that's interesting that you get credit for, so we talked about vents, roof, siding, but windows,
Hmm.
that they are recommending that you have dual pane windows and that at least one of the panels, presumably the outside, is tempered glass.
Hmm.
That's really not uncommon these days. Tempered glass is being used more and more because what was happening is that the heat was causing single pane windows to shatter. And so forget about the eighth of an inch opening in your vent. You would
Yeah.
now have a wide open window space where burning embers are going to blow in up
Yep.
against your curtains, landing on your furniture, and then fires. The whole house is pretty quickly consumed.
Yeah.
So putting in dual pane windows, not only is it energy efficient, but it also is fire hardening. And so those are kind of the big main things about
Mm.
materials around your structure and building practices. Uh,
Yes.
but it is interesting to say that nobody is inspecting that. Those are really more suggestions. So like when CalFire or Contra Costa Fire District come out, they're really looking at the defensible space.
Mhm.
They're not looking at the house structure, even though those are good practices.
Although the people who do care about the fire hardening list is the people who you call and say, can you issue an insurance policy for my home? And they'll start asking questions like, what kind of roof do you have? What kind of siding do you have? How far away from the home is there a fire hydrant? What kind of windows do you have? You know, things like that. And that might mean the difference between getting a policy at all or getting a policy that you can afford.
Right. And go look at our previous episode when we talk about the not Cal Fire, but the Fair Plan and
Hmm.
secondary insurance markets and things like that. That's a whole conversation to its own.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so let's say you're interested in a house and it has one of these inspections. Is it automatically the seller's responsibility to make it ready?
It is not. It is negotiable between the buyer and seller, like everything else. The seller has to do the inspection, but the defensible space requirements, that's negotiable.
Now, if the seller doesn't do it, is there a time frame that the buyer has to complete it, or can they just let it go and ignore it?
No, they have to complete it within a certain time period.
I think that there's a reinspection in 30 days.
Hmm.
That there were from the initial inspection to do a third to have it reinspected. But what I've heard is that unless it's an egregious violation, that there isn't much teeth in, like the Contra Costa Fire District isn't going to write you a um a citation or a fine of
Hmm.
something. It really is more about the homeowner wanting to be responsible. Now, I did hear there are some exceptions to that, as there always have been fines for
Hmm.
people who have egregious fire hazards. So, like if you have a big piece of property and you haven't knocked the weeds down next to the property line, you will get cited for that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I imagine that as we see more pressure around insurance companies, we're going to see fines become more of a reality.
Hmm.
And then the other thing I heard was it's only a matter of time, perhaps in the next couple of years, that this is going to get pushed down to people that are just in the moderate fire range. So right now it's just for those in the high fire zone and the very high fire zone, but it's coming for moderate also.
Yeah. It's a good practice because, I mean, we have fires in areas where we don't expect to have fires. I used to not worry about it at all until I mean, because I thought I'm in a neighborhood, there's no big trees around me. There's not brush around me. There's not vegetation around me. I mean, everybody's got irrigation and we're watering the heck out of our yards and they're nice and green. What's going to burn? But then I watched how that Lahaina fire happened in Hawaii and how it started at the very top of that hill and just swept down that hillside and just wiped out everything in its path right down to the ocean. And I thought, okay, maybe I should be worried about this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's really kind of challenging. There's all sorts of different policies about forest land management and things like that.
Yeah.
And we can do a lot of finger pointing, we can do a lot of name calling.
Yeah.
And I think that at the end of the day, if you can save your house, do you care where the policy started, or do you just want
Right.
to have your house be a safe place to live?
Right.
Um, I think that sometimes we get distracted
Yeah.
unnecessarily by these side trips. All
I
right.
absolutely agree.
All right. Anything else about the defensible zone or fire hardening or the form or the fees or who has to do it?
Well, the question I've been asking myself over the last week or so, when I've really gotten immersed in this as we have these three homes in fire zones, is who's enforcing this?
Yeah.
We have all kinds of things that happen during a real estate transaction, and there's no enforcement of it. We had water or drought tolerant or the
Water conserving fixtures.
water conserving plumbing fixtures. And I think the form says 1994 is when the law went into effect. But for all that time, there hasn't been anybody who's made available to enforce it. So we disclose it in case they ever figure out who's going to enforce it. We also have automatic gas shutoff valve devices for earthquake safety, so that if we have a big earthquake, it turns off your gas line so your house doesn't burn from a gas fire, from the gas. And then we've got this, and there doesn't seem to be anybody enforcing it. And I'm thinking it just falls to the real estate agents to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different. So I agree with you, right? There's nobody, I think I don't think the escrow company, which is going to be the last line of defense, the neutral arbitrator of that, but it's going to be up
I
to
don't think they're taking it on.
brokers and their transaction coordinators and the broker risk managers of the
Yeah.
brokers that are going to look at it to make
Yeah.
sure that you call that the county or the state gets called. And
Yeah.
once you make that phone call, then the county or state is they're going to monitor it supposedly.
Yeah.
But who's going to make the call to say, hey, we're making a transaction? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they're monitoring it, but you can be cited if you don't do it. And I'm not sure how that happens. Does your
Well,
neighbor turn you in? I don't know.
yeah. Well, once you get the inspection, now you're on their radar that you're going to.
Yeah. Yes. So, yep. There's always something new in real estate.
Well, this one is a kind of a mixed thing. I think that the ethos of it is going to make people safer, and it's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes laws feel very esoteric. This one actually feels very concrete.
Yeah.
But again, when we try and do something blanket across a state the size of California, there's always going to be times when it's a little wonky and doesn't quite work right. But
Well, it's a big state, lots of different areas. So,
one last thing I just remember that when you do that inspection, it's good for 6 months. So if
yes.
you're getting ready to list your house, you do it within 6 months of when you think you're going to actually close the transaction,
Yeah.
and it's good for that whole time.
Yep.
So if we did it right now and we decided to pull a house off the market and put it back on in February, we don't need to redo it.
Right. Right.
All right.
All right. Good. Good information.
All right. Well, Dorothy was
Let's let's put a link to CalFire in our show notes.
absolutely. We'll do that.
Yeah.
All right. With that, Dorothy was right. There's no place like home. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.